Was my uploaded file tampered with? Data leaked? Welcome back to Venn Coding. Have you heard about CVE 2025-24813? The vulnerability affecting Apache Tomcat? Oh, and it's not just any vulnerability. It can lead to remote code execution, RCE, and data leaks. This is not something you can afford to ignore. Absolutely not, especially when you realize just how many servers depend on Tomcat. It's scary to think about, right? As someone who develops security products, I couldn't resist analyzing this vulnerability. And of course, I'll be sharing everything with you. Today, we're skipping the Security 101 basics and diving straight into the core of this vulnerability. What it tells us about the bigger picture of cybersecurity. Sounds like a plan? Let's get into it. Imagine this. You're uploading a large file to a server. Because it's so big, your browser splits it into smaller chunks to send it more efficiently. Makes sense, right? These chunks are known as partial put requests. Now here's the problem. How does Tomcat handle these chunks? Tomcat creates temporary files using the user-provided file names. Sounds risky? It is. This small detail opened the door to a massive security vulnerability. So, how can an attacker actually use this to break into a system or steal data? There are a few ways. Information leakage and corruption. Let's say an attacker knows the name of a sensitive file that's being uploaded. If certain conditions are met, like if the server allows access to default servlets, they could view or even modify these sensitive files. That's bad news. But that's not all. Remote code execution, RCE, is even worse. And this is where things get really tricky. For this exploit to work, a few conditions need to be met. 1. Certain permissions need to be enabled. 2. The server must allow partial PUT pre-requests. 3. The application must use file-based session persistence. What's session persistence? It's how the server remembers your session information while you browse, storing it in files. Now, if an attacker manipulates these session files, they could hijack an entire session. And if the application is using a library vulnerable to deserialization attacks, at this point, the attacker could completely take over the server. Sounds bad? It gets worse. Partial put requests are enabled by default in vulnerable versions of Tomcat. This is practically leaving the door wide open for attackers. Looking at the patch for this vulnerability, we see changes in how the execute partial put function handles uploaded file names. Before the fix, the function replaced as with in the file path before saving the uploaded data. How it's triggered. The function is called within default servlet do put. The read-only property must be set to false, meaning put is enabled. The parse content range function must return a non-empty value. By default, files uploaded via put are stored in works Catalina, localhost, root, but slashes are replaced with dots. Now, here's where things get really dangerous. Let's go back to a previous vulnerability. CVE 2020-9484, a deserialization exploit in Tomcat's session persistence mechanism. Here's how it works. 1. If Tomcat is configured to use file-based session persistence, it stores session data in files inside work, Catalina, localhost, root. 2. When a JSessionID is passed, Tomcat calls file store a load, which deserializes the session file. 3. If an attacker can upload a .session file via a PUT request, they might be able to trigger deserialization and execute arbitrary code. 4. Combine this with a known serialization gadget in the class path, e.g. Commons Collections 3.21, and you've got full RCE. Brilliant exploitation method? Yes. Easy to pull off? Not really. Despite how dangerous this vulnerability is, exploiting it in the wild isn't straightforward. Here's why. 1. Default servlet must have put enabled read-only false. This is not a default setting. 2. Tomcat must be using file-based session persistence. Again, not a default configuration, similar to CVE 2020-9484. 3. A vulnerable deserialization gadget must exist in the class path. So, is this a massive security threat? Yes. But is every Tomcat server at risk? Not necessarily. First things first, check your Apache Tomcat version. The affected versions are Apache Tomcat 11.0.0, M1 to 11.0.2, Apache Tomcat 10.10 M1 to 10.1.2, Apache Tomcat 9.0.0 and older. If you're running any of these versions, update right now, like yesterday. Patches have been released and you need to update immediately. Beyond just patching, this vulnerability reveals a bigger issue in cybersecurity. Software complexity is a major risk. Even the smallest coding mistakes can lead to huge security consequences. Security configurations matter. Many servers were vulnerable simply because partial put was enabled, even when it wasn't necessary. Reducing attack surfaces is critical. Security auditing and testing are more important than ever. If thorough security reviews were done earlier, this vulnerability could have been caught before reaching production. Just building software isn't enough. You have to build it securely from day one. This deep dive has been a wake-up call for me too. Right now, I'm working on my security product, which is designed to protect Java applications from all known vulnerabilities. It's a big project and a good one. But here's my struggle. I'm a technical person. I feel like I'm at a crossroads. Should I keep improving the product or should I focus on marketing my security product? I honestly don't know. And this is where I need your advice. If you have suggestions or experience in launching security products, please drop a comment below. I truly want my product to help more companies protect their websites and servers. That's it for today's deep dive. If you're interested in cybersecurity, security products, or my journey, subscribe and follow along. Let's keep moving forward together. See you in the next video.